long-standing institutional FX executive, interbank trader, and current Vice President of Institutional FX at Advanced Markets and Fortex, Richard Perona joins us. Richard is a specifically well-known voice in this industry from the inside. If you need to know something about bank trading or how the infrastructure works and you want a straight, good quality, honest opinion, ask Richard. I've never as you know, getting a bit old now, probably more old and cynical than some, but 27 years of this industry, largely on the technology side, at institutional level. But I also saw the rise of retail Forex across the world. I saw that. So now we have this whole holistic, comprehensive institutional retail sector. But I've never in my life seen anything like the latest wave where cryptocurrencies and ICOs have come to the forefront over the last few months, to the point where it's almost like an addiction for a lot of market participants. They are behaving in a way where it would have, some of them, especially on the smaller sides where the ICOs are concerned, where it appears from the outside as though they've lost all their sensibilities.
It seems that the fundamentals have really jumped out of where investing should have gone. I as well been in the market for quite a while. I saw the whole U.S. go from the Wild West to be extremely regulated.
That's right.
And now we have another product, this ICO, Bitcoin, the cryptocurrencies. It's the Wild West again. And instead of just being to the U.S., which I'm very familiar with, it's around the globe.
It is, and it's the Wild West in a different way to what you are coming from a very high quality Wall Street tier 1 bank trading background.
Correct.
Back when we first knew each other and so forth. However, this is different because it's a nothing. It's an airware. It's a non-quantifiable thing that's peer-to-peer.
Right.
So it has much more insidious consequences if people get too addicted to it, in my opinion.
I think that's a pretty good way of looking at it. They're looking at this, the true believers are looking at this as technology gold.
They are.
And when you try to say this is going to go around a bank or a government and you can exclude these type of players from the processes that go on in the industry, they're just not going to let go of that type of stranglehold they have on this. You're also bringing in the Fed of how money supply happens. To go around this, you can bring in the bad actors. You can move money anywhere. The government's kind of like to really have a stranglehold on this. The premise of it makes sense to me, but the regulation's going to have to be there at some point, and you're not going to have to. And you cannot cut out the banks.
No,
you're asking them to take a massive pay cut because this is where the commissions come from. And banks aren't going to let moving money around, and they can't find out who's moving or how moving.
That's right. That's
the movement, the money. They're going to have to know where this is going,
and they can't quantify it either because it's very much dependent on its peer-to-peer supply and demand.
Right.
So the thing is, you're right, and it would be very easy for them to regulate this out because from an outsider's point, from an observer's point, looking at it around the world, mushrooming like it is in popularity to the point where, excuse my expression, where people are almost foaming at the mouth to get to conferences and propagate their latest crypto idea, which has gone in 3 months. And then the banks will, and then you have the original people who started it, who were quite maverick orientated people who the banks and the governments could see where there is actual infrastructure and there's a technological network hosted largely on systems like Equinix, where you have big trading servers and venue connectivity, which is all physical.
Yes.
And all under the auspices of senior executives of public listed companies and shareholders and transparency and things like that, and everybody knows exactly where they are.
Yep.
You have then a subculture. And subcultures are usually anarchistic, and it's very easy to remove those by banks because no subculture that I've ever heard of has ever gone the way of domination. It's always remained exactly that. It's either been fizzled out and taken money with it, or been banned, or the perpetrators of it have found themselves in trouble with the law. So,
I do think that it could be here to stay. The bigger currencies, the bigger cryptocurrencies.
Like Bitcoin.
Ethereum.
Yes.
They are here to stay, but at what price? Are we going to be looking at the value of Bitcoin being $100 when you can't use it to do anything besides be digital gold? And when no one can take it, say a venue like Starbucks or McDonald's or anything else, if no one's going to accept this as a currency, then what use is it besides just digital gold?
Right.
And are people going to say we can use this for transactions or not? Once the banks and the regulators kind of get their grips on this, I think a lot of people will be scared, and we're going to see a massive sell-off. And then I think the next 2 years or so, we're going to find out if this is real or not.
I think that's right. And you're looking at it, again, a very pragmatic way, as though it is a commodity, which is how, in this country, in America, here in the US, Bitcoin is considered a commodity by the SEC. And they are right. It is a commodity on the basis that you can put it on a futures exchange.
Right.
And you can have it as a futures commodity. It is mined. Okay, it's virtually mined. It's mined and it has a limited supply. And it's a raw material that you can buy up and speculate on its future.
Right.
Therefore, it is a valid futures contract. It's a risky one, but it
Very
is a valid futures contract in the way that weather futures was a risky one in the 1970s.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
But it was a value, this Chicago-based exchanges all offered it. So that is one thing. So that's the pragmatic way of looking at it, that it's a digital gold, it's a commodity, it's a sort of thing that is hard to quantify. But then you have the non-institutional and so you have things like digital currency exchanges, which disappear without any recourse.
Right.
And the owner can say, oh, it was an e-wallet hack, but it was actually him stealing the money.
Yes.
And there's nothing you can do about it. Or you then have ICOs, which in my opinion is nothing to do with this industry at all.
Well, in any industry, you're going to get some bad actors, bad players that always give black eyes. I mean, we're from FX. We've been here for a while. We've kind of seen this happen over and over and over, and no one learns a lesson.
Right.
So, I mean, the lesson learned is going to have to be go with the mainstream players,
That's
follow
right.
the regulation, follow whatever the government's going to tell you, and just only put in money that you're willing to lose.
Exactly right. And that's on a trading perspective, that's correct. And then you have, as you say, the FX brokerages taking it up because the digital marketing campaigns they operate have shown that the demand for that is massive. When they put out lead gathering adverts to get the demand's massive, so they put it on, and I know for sure that 2 or 3 brokerages have lost between one of them 17 million in a week, another a publicly listed brokerage 40 million in a week.
Well, here's the issue with that. They're not doing actuals, they're doing CFDs.
They are doing CFDs.
And so if you're doing the actuals, I would be shocked. But at the same time, CFDs, you can buy and sell. So
it's an off-exchange futures.
I would actually tell smaller investors to probably even get into the CFD and not the actuals, because with that, you can actually short it or hedge it.
Yes, you can.
With the actuals, you're just long in either wrong or you're going to be getting 20 or 30% a day.
Right, and IG Group knows this. They've started now offering some cryptocurrency CFDs, which is like that. And that is the right way to do it, because you have a...
But the problem is with that, sorry to interrupt, but the problem with the broker, for the investor, you should probably do the CFD. With the broker side, how are they going to hedge it? Because you need a license to get onto the futures market.
Yeah, it's an off-exchange.
With that, they're actually putting up massive amount of risk for what type of return. I mean, if everybody starts shorting it and you're long, this is going to turn into a massive issue.
That did turn into an issue for 2 companies, which we reported about recently. One of them was a digital marketing orientated company that doesn't have customer contact and was doing Bitcoin trading, lost 40 million. So what they did afterwards was to put it in so that it closes the trade after 20 minutes.
Well, that doesn't help.
So it's a binary option. But that's kind of illegal because a binary option can't go more... First of all, in a lot of places, off-exchange binary options are illegal, including here in America. The other thing is that 20-minute binary option is completely non-compliant. So they're not calling it that, but it is a binary option, because what you're doing is you're placing a bet on some spread that expires after only 20 minutes. Right. So it's kind of non-compliant, and it just defeats the whole purpose of the only way to do it is on exchange, really.
Right. With the small investor, the CFD, it's a very tough thing to say to do it or not to do it. If you need exposure to it, it's an easy way to get in and get out. With the actuals, I've seen firsthand the actual volumes. It's damn near impossible if this thing is sinking to get out of it.
Yes.
I mean, it moves so fast, so hard, and now the Wall Street guys are coming in and they're going to really change the name of the game. And I think a lot of young, small investors are going to feel what it's like to swim with the sharks.
Oh, they will. Yep. They certainly will. That's right. And I think then you have on the end of it all the tail end, I call it, right, where they were doing off-exchange binaries or other such things which were false platforms, really. False markets, a false market.
Doesn't go anywhere.
Have now gone into ICO because they don't even have to promise that there's a financial market product there.
Yeah.
They can just say, you invest, we might give you a token that doesn't yet exist in a product that will never exist. And then as you, all that happens is you're just putting money into the pocket of the person raising the capital for the ICO. Exactly. It's not genuine venture capital.
And you got to cross your fingers that the product is good, and he's telling the truth, and he's going to go actually do work.
And there's no way of checking.
I do know a few ICOs that are good people, that have decent products that are out in the marketplace now. But I do know some others that are, you scratch your head and they kind of just fizzle out. Yes. And you don't hear a thing and then say, what happened to my money? Then you just watch the digital token just kind of slowly sink down. And you wonder who's selling, who's buying, where's this market coming from? Because no one's doing anything with this thing. I'd be very wary if anyone gave an ICO or to do anything with an ICO unless it's an actual product that you can see.
That exists already.
Exists already. I mean, Kodak had a go at it, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
I can see the blockchain technology being in our future, 100%.
I agree with you, but nothing to do with bitcoins. Completely separate.
Well, let's take a look at one of the more popular ones, Ripple.
Yeah.
Ripple coin, I think it's called X Market or whatever their product is underneath Ripple. It's become a massive company. No one actually uses the Ripple coin.
No.
They use another product underneath the same company.
That's
but
right.
People, when they say, oh, we just closed out on this company, this big company, this big company, it actually isn't closing out and using the Ripple coin, which should cause supply and demand. They have, I think, 1 billion coins available. Half a billion is in use in the market. None of those big companies like Santander Bank just came out and said, we're going to use I think it's called X Market of Ripple. That's not using their token. That's using another product.
That's right.
And so it kind of gives false advertisement, and the market jumps on this.
Yes, it does.
For no reason.
Yes, the younger generation are looking for a new type of investment, that's for sure. But taking a credit card debt to buy cryptocurrency on a cash advance, no wonder the United States is stopping it. Back a year or so ago, back in New York, this situation that you highlight about people buying on credit cards didn't really exist so much. And also this mushrooming of a cult status and mania wasn't there.
Right.
It was before all of that.
Right. So now everyone's kind of getting in, figuring out how the best way to get in. You can either look at your savings or whatever's in your checking account and purchase there, or you can take your credit card and do a cash advance or purchase it on the credit card.
Which is absurd, isn't it?
But what you've seen this morning is Bank of America and I think JP Morgan both came out and said no more. They're banning banning the type of transactions to buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Ripple on any exchanges with purchases via credit card.
They should.
And they're calling it a cash advance instead of purchasing an asset. So a cash advance is starting interest right off the bat, where you can probably get a promotional feed if you're purchasing an asset. The first purchases are the 6 months. Open a credit card, you can purchase this for $1,000, no interest on there, and hopefully it doubles and you can pay the credit card off, and now you're in the asset.
And that is addictive gambling. Because what that
yes, that is, yeah.
That is exactly the type of thing that the young people, young inexperienced people who are foaming at the mouth at the moment with this are likely to do. They have got student debts, they've got no assets, no house, they haven't started their career yet, but their mind is being filled with crypto all the time. So what they do is they go to a credit card firm, probably explain that the reason for applying for it is not really what they want it for, buy the Ethereum or Bitcoin with it on a cash advance basis.
Right.
And if it goes wrong, they will never pay the liability back.
And I think credit card companies are foreseeing their future coming up pretty quick.
I think that's right.
Right.
And then, then on the other hand, you have all that kind of overly, almost obsessive behaviour to do with it. And then you have you and I who will sit somewhere and an acquaintance will come up and say, well, we just made a load of money on this, why aren't you getting into it? And there is a peer pressure, even among...
It's almost a shaming.
It's a shaming.
At Thanksgiving or Christmas or wherever you get together or gather or you go to a bar, you go to your friends, you hear, there's always someone there making a ton of money, high-fiving, smiling, I can't believe how much I just made. I'll be honest, I did the same thing. But at the same time, once I started seeing people come up to me how to get involved, that's when I started pulling back and saying, and I was like, this is, until I always say this to everyone who wants to get in, do your own homework. figure out if this is an investment for you, because I'm not going to let you just jump in with this unless you know what you're doing. And, I think people are going to figure out real quick that this is basically a FOMO moment, a once in a generation. It moved up so hard, so fast, within a year or 9 months. We're talking like 1,300, 2,000%.
Yes.
Like, that's crazy.
And it's never happened before, really. Not in our generation.
I've never seen anything like
Nor
this.
have I.
And it just kind
Nor
of,
have I.
and I hear from people around that because of my fundamental background of understanding what an asset is worth, this and that it works against me because I don't understand this brand new product. Look, could they be right? If it keeps going up, they could be right. If it goes down, then it's one of those things like nothing in human history has ever taken off like this. And
that's right.
It's going to go back to the same model of going back to about zero. And it's going to rip, I hate to use the term, rip everyone's face off. And when it does, that's when you should buy back in. When everyone has given up on this thing, and then I think it's going to be an asset. And if the retailers start picking up and you can start using this as what it's intended to do, to make payments, then sure, you can have some money into it, but not much.
No.
I would not put a savings or any credit card investment into it.
No, definitely
But
not.
you have to wait till it comes all the way back down, and it's going to be a patience game.
And that requires your kind of level of expertise in assessing what not only market behaviour, but electronic trends and people's behaviour.
Right.
Because that's what it is. What you're seeing now is two demographics, which is really confusing. Young, overly enthusiastic obsessives who are going literally nuts and not behaving in a rational manner at all. They can't get their hands on all this stuff quickly enough, which is very insidious and very problematic. Then you have people my age who have had a career in the electronic trading sector and are knowledgeable, who have completely flipped their direction towards that. And they all of a sudden chop everything they were doing, and this has taken over their world. That's also very problematic.
A lot of the Wall Street guys I keep in contact with, when I brought this up to them a year ago, they all said the same thing. I'm too old to understand this. I don't care. It's whatever it is. Now they're coming back to me saying, well, now my kids make fun of me for not being part of it. I'm still out.
Right.
Because their kids use the phrase free money, and the kids use their phrase, why didn't you get in? And they know when this thing goes up, it's going to come down. It's going to come down real hard. And there's never in any time in human history has there ever been free money.
Never.
It doesn't occur.
Never.
And this is basically free money.
It's free money.
You put your money in any time last year, you're going to be fine. You put your money in now. I can't tell where it's going to be at the end of this year. I cannot tell. It could be higher. I don't know. It could be way lower. I don't know. All I know is that if you trade the thing, I'd be very careful with everything you put it in.
That's for sure. I think you're right about this. Not only the free money, but there's never been an output of any significant value for doing nothing on a product that doesn't exist for no effort. There's no such parameter.
The digital gold reason that people are using, it does hold some water, but it has to be globally accepted.
Yes, it does.
Which is not happening at this point. No. At this point right now, it looks like banks and regulators of countries are kind of pumping the brakes on this thing. China just this morning basically stopped all of it. India is kind of saying, you get mixed messages of what's coming out. Korea was 30% higher than the rest of the entire world's market. Their exchanges were at such a premium that people couldn't get a hold of it quick enough. Now they're tapping the brakes too. No more fake accounts. You need to have a name on there. So now they're actually less than where the actual global market is. I don't see the U.S. being part of the U.S. FX market all these years. I cannot see them doing anything that would be in the investor's favor. I think it would be way more on the side of caution. So
very much so, yes.
I would probably say in the coming days, it's just going to be a blanket statement of saying you have X amount of days, and it's going to be, But I do know that the statements for taxes came out a couple of days ago. So I think a lot of people are looking at that and saying, how is it now I have to pay taxes on this stuff I'm losing on now? And, I made a little here, and now I'm getting bludgeoned a month into this year. And I think it's going to come to, a pretty bloody end on this one.
Yeah, I think that's right. I agree. And I think that the government aspect of it is certainly very relevant.
Right.
And that ties in with all the infrastructure that's overseen by everything.
Right.
That is absolutely relevant.
I think that the the technology that the government uses and banks use can be replaced. But that does not mean they're going to pick up this as a secondary currency. That would basically take the power out of a government's hand, which they will never let go of power. No. As we see, nowadays, power is the only thing that these governments really care about.
That's right, and subcultures like that are not part of mainstream politics or technology or financial services at all, at institutional level or otherwise.
Maybe on an island that's created
specifically for that, yes.
Right,
on a local basis, yes, yeah.
I could see it maybe being a good thing for maybe some smaller countries. Such as in developing countries that have bad actors as their leaders.
That's right.
I would not mind seeing Bitcoin being taken up there as kind of
places like that,
as maybe kind of a let's see how it goes with them as a a currency.
It would have to be places that are small,
very
because if you do it in Venezuela, the government will just block all the IP addresses again.
Right.
So yes, it's good for countries like that where the actual despotic government has made a mess of the country and has taken everything from the people, and they've had enough of it and they want to empower themselves. But it's still not, you're not free from the government, because they will just block the IP addresses.
Right.
And then tell people they can't travel abroad, to go and get it out.
It would have to be a accepting government of saying yes.
Yes, it would.
And I think it would take a lot of burden off these people too, but at the same time that's too hard, and it's too cloudy to see exactly how that's going to play out, if it would make sense or not. Other than that, we're going to need to see a lot more retailers to use this type of currency to make it any type of mainstream.
I agree.
Other than that, we're just looking at Beanie Babies and Cabbage Patch sitting in your closet in 20 years from now.
That is exactly right. That's exactly very, very good way of putting it. And probably people who look back and think, how could I have let something get a grip of me so much like that?
I mean, I remember in the 80s, getting a Cabbage Patch Kid was
a huge craze.
Huge thing. I mean, he would be worth hundreds of
dollars. There were premiums on them.
Huge premiums. They were. Beanie Babies, same thing. You just same thing. When someone tried to explain it to me, I was like, what is this? And so now I think in 5 years from now, we might be looking, oh yeah, I still own 10,000 Bitcoin. And you're like, why the hell didn't you sell when it was $1 billion?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, the fiat is not going away.
No, it's not.
Bitcoin has I don't even think it has a puncher's chance anymore. Until I could buy a cup of coffee with this thing, I don't know.
And until there's some recourse if something goes wrong. Because if something goes wrong, there's no recourse.
There's no recourse. I actually had an issue with an exchange about a stop loss. I emailed them, and 2 months later they got back to me, said they'll look into it.
Yeah, they will say that, because what are you going to do about it, really?
There's no regulation. There's no one to sue. There's no way to get anything back. It's just
and the government, if it all comes down, the government and the banks are going to say you're on your own, because this is nothing to do with anything.
We didn't want this in the first place.
That's right.
So the way the U.S. kind of did the FX in the early 2000s was I think there were 90 odd brokers in 2005, 2006, and now there are 2
here.
Yeah. In the U.S. So there are 2.
Yeah, 2.
So the way they did it first was
soon to be 3. IG Group are coming back.
Right. Good for them.
Good for them. They're doing it right. This is excellent. That's where I see the future. I don't see it with going nuts and jumping on something without thinking carefully. I see it as coming to America, which is a sensibly run country with a sensible and very highly experienced electronic market structure. Probably the most well organized in the world, I would say. Where there's not much competition, and you have a good quality name like IG Group, which is a public listed company run by people who've been there for years and know what they're doing.
Right.
And they already have a base in Chicago for the futures market. They can go there and then basically take on board middle class, well-read American customers, which is an excellent customer base.
I think the highest deposit, right?
Highest deposits in the world for the longer periods of time, because they're analytical and they've probably got other portfolios and other things. It's a very high quality environment, this country, for that. So that's where I see the opportunities, doing that, and going to Chicago to do futures, not losing your mind and trying to grab hold of
a fringe product that may or may not be here. It's the same as
that's right, and without considering
binary options, right?
Yes,
it really is the same.
It's that, but with people going nuts for it, instead of considering carefully, putting up the hard yards and carefully making yourself into a position to come here.
I'm not going to shame a company to try to make a little money. If there is a massive demand for something, you're not going to go after this type of market, or at least try to squeeze some money out of it. We aren't all capitalists here. If we weren't, we wouldn't be doing any of this.
That's right.
So, ideas always come about, and this could make or break. But I think in the end, the brokers will be just fine on this. I think the problem is going to be the people getting into the CFDs.
Most certainly.
And especially if they give them leverage, especially I hear some like 30-1 on CFDs, it's going to end very, very poorly for the end user.
Yes, for the end user, yes. And there'll be nowhere for them to turn.
It's going to, there's nothing that can be done.
Nothing that can be done. Exactly.
But if they want to part ways with their money, I mean, who's this broker to say either way?
That's right. That's exactly right. Richard Perona, a very experienced professional in this industry.
Thanks,
always a great insight into everything. Great to see you.
Thanks, my friend.